Let's just talk first of all about the issues that the government is facing, and particularly Home Secretary Priti Patel is facing with her own supporters. New polling at the weekend suggesting that there's widespread Tory anger at the total failure to take on this issue.
Yes, indeed. One could say it's only to be expected. Look, when politicians make promises, they've got to deliver. What has happened with the Channel, and I won't go into other areas, but with the Channel, the government has consistently overpromised and far from under-delivering, hasn't delivered at all. Until that changes and people can see that they've got a grip and they're getting hold of the problem, I'm afraid people are going to get unhappier and unhappier. And that's where it is. This wall behind me in the picture is the red wall of communism in 1989 in Romania. Everyone said that was so firmly in place it would never collapse. Well, it did collapse and collapsed very quickly. That's exactly what's going to happen to the red wall here unless the government gets a grip of the Channel.
Well, and this is it. This was a key part of the vote for Brexit. It wasn't just about immigration, as many claimed it was, but a key part of it was the ability to control our own borders, that we in this country would decide who could come to work and to live here rather than Brussels deciding it. And a big part of that was being able to control, with people who were possibly be a threat to us. And with that terror attack in Liverpool last weekend before last, which could have been so much worse than it was. We could have seen women and newborn babies being killed by that terrorist, or veterans at a Remembrance Day service. We're going to find out, hopefully, in the future, what the actual target was. But that was a man who was, again, a failed asylum seeker. He's not the first failed asylum seeker who has caused havoc in this country and terrorism. Even though the vast majority of these people will be coming here either because they are economic migrants or because they are fleeing persecution elsewhere, have decided that Britain is where they want a home rather than anywhere else in mainland Europe where they pass through, we still have a right to decide who comes to this country or not. And there's just this abject failure here. Why do you think the government is failing? Because we're told that there's, Priti Patel talks tough. We're told that she takes it very seriously. It's what she cares about, and that they know that conservative voters care about it. We're told that, she's in talks with the French. She's doing everything. Why is this failing? Is it, as many suspect, that the government doesn't really have a grip on this? Is it that the civil service are stopping her? Is it human rights legislation? What is stopping the government deal with what appears to be, on the face of it, a fairly simple issue?
Well, lots of pressures in this country, both within the Conservative Party, but of course in the media, generally among people in Whitehall. There is no great desire to deal with this because it gets caught up in race, it gets caught up in all these sort of issues. Frankly, control of borders, we either have a border, we either have immigration rules or we don't. At the moment, we have immigration rules, we're not enforcing them. People are coming across because they can. Yeah. Over 25,000 probably now. If we were to show that once they got into their dinghy, they weren't effectively home and dry, apart from the unfortunate ones who lose their lives, if we were to show that it wasn't going to work, then they would stop coming. What we should do is actually detain all those who come here illegally, not give asylum, not even consider asylum to those who come here illegally.
That is what the government is saying, that the default will be, if you arrive illegally on a boat in this way, that you will not be eligible to apply for asylum. And would that be a big enough deterrent?
Not in itself. What you've got to do then is say, you won't get asylum and you won't stay here. The government is saying you won't get asylum, but they're not saying you're not going to stay here.
Yeah.
And in fact,
as we've seen with the terrorist attack in Liverpool, 7-8 years after applying and failing to get asylum,
indeed,
still here.
And that was part of a series of incidents, of terror incidents, of people who had claimed asylum, been denied it, and were still here. Parsons Green, there was Reading. I mean, it goes on and on. People who apply for asylum, we don't give it to them, and then they end up staying here.
Yeah.
That's got to stop.
How much is an issue with the civil servants, though? We understand from some of the reports this weekend that the civil servants have described Priti Patel, as sick, as useless. They don't rate her. She's obviously been accused of bullying in the past, involving some of her senior aides. There is this feeling that whatever their views and the rights or wrongs of their views, that the civil service have their own agenda, what they want. And this has been an ongoing issue that Dominic Cummings identified as the blob, where whether it's in education or in the Home Office or anywhere else, that we saw this over Brexit. They have their own agenda, a lot of these civil servants, and they consider their job to sort of stop elected government ministers carrying out their manifesto pledges rather than enabling them to do so.
Well, there's certainly resistance in certain government departments to getting a real control of immigration. There are those, like the Treasury, who believe that it's actually beneficial to have masses of people coming to this country. It's not, frankly. They're totally out of touch. Having worked for the government for nearly 40 years myself, ultimately, you can't blame the civil servants. The civil servants do as they're told. If you get a grip of civil servants and tell them exactly what's to be done, they will do it.
Okay.
If you don't, then they work behind the scenes, particularly at the senior upper echelons, the policy enforcers really, and those who devise policy. They very often are not in favor of politicians. Yeah. They don't like politicians. But look, that's nothing new. Civil servants not liking the politicians that they work for.
This is true. Thank you very much indeed. Alp Mehmet, Chairman of Migration Watch, appreciate that.